Let's learn cubic right angle weave. Today we're going to do it with 5 different colors to make it a little bit easier for you to visualize how the stitch actually works. So let's get started. I'm going to start with this color here. I'm going to start with four beads. We're going to bring it down towards the end of our thread. And then we're going to tie it. Okay. So right there we formed what I like to call the base of our CRAW unit or cubic right angle unit. I'm going to stitch through the next bead without adding anything. Be careful that you don't bring that knot right here into the bead. Now we're going to start our first wall. So I'm going to use my second color. I'm going to pick up 1, 2, and 3 because we're going to be using this bead here as our 4th bead to create the first wall. Stitch through there. Then we got our 3 beads right there. The shapes are a little bit different, but that's fine. And then we're going to stitch through the second bead on our base right there. Only the one on the base. Okay, right there. Now we're going to pick up our next color, which is going to be our second wall. We're only going to pick up 2. Why? Because we're going to be using these 2 to form our wall. So we're picking up 2, coming out of here, stitch through these 2, 1 and 2, right there. Pull that through. Okay, and now we have our base and 1, 2 walls, but we're going to pull so that they stand up like little walls. And now we're going to stitch through our third one on the base. Now we're going to go with our third color. We're going to pick up 2 because we're going to be using these 2. Stitch through the one on the side of the last wall that you made and the bead on the base. Now we're going to start to arrange them. Okay, so just kind of stand them up a little bit. Can you see it there? Oops. Okay, we have our base right here, our first wall, our second wall back here, and our third wall. So we're going to stitch through the 4th bead on the base, and we're going to stitch up the bead on the first wall. Okay, once I pull this, you're going to see it's going to start to turn into a little bit of a cube. You have to hold it in place a little bit. There we go. It looks a little discombobulated. And now we're going to go with our 5th color, and this is going to be our 4th wall. So we have our base, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd wall. Now we're going to complete our 4th wall by using 1 bead, stitching down the side bead on the last wall created. Stitch down. Okay, stitch through the one on the base that we were working with. So it's this one right here. And up the side wall on the side bead on our first wall. Pull this nice and tight. Stitch through the last bead that you added. Okay, there we go. And now we're going to turn it so that we're looking at the 4 beads at the top. This is what I call the ceiling, or the roof of your room that you created. And we're going to stitch through 1, 2, 3 through all 4 of them. Okay, so just stitch through the pink, the green, the cream, and the blue again. And once we tighten that, we have our little first unit. Okay, now I do want to show you the colors so that you can see the difference in the walls. So that our first initial 4 is the base down here. Then we have our first wall, which we picked up 3 beads. Then we moved on to create our second wall, which we only used 2 beads. And then we moved on to create our third wall, which we only used 2 beads. And then we moved on to create our fourth and final wall, which only uses 1 bead. And then we move on to tie in all of these together. Okay, to stitch through all of them so that you have a nice base for building up on. So now this is our ceiling, and it's going to be also the floor of our next CRAW unit. Okay, so let me try to stay within the colors. So I'm going to pick up blue so I'm going to go in reverse so that we can see the difference in the colors. So we already have 1. We're going to pick up 3. Right, we have 1. We're going to pick up 3, stitch through that same blue one. We have our first wall right there. We're going to turn it so that you can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to stitch through the next bead on the base, which is this pink one right here. Okay, there. Now I'm going to pick up 2 pink, stitch down the side wall, the side bead on the first wall, and the bead on the base. That creates your second wall. Stitch through the next bead on the base. Turn it so you can see it a little bit better. Pick up 2 of our third color, which is the green. Stitch down the pink and the green, which is the one on the base. And then stitch through the base, the next on the base, which is that cream. And now we have our 3 little walls there. So now we're going to stitch up the first wall we created. Now we're going to pick up a cream, stitch down, stitch down the bead on the side of the last wall that you created, through the one on the base, up the one from the first wall, the side one, and through the new cream that we just added. And of course, we're going to tighten up the ceiling. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you can see, you're going to start to see the colors are a little funky, but you start to see the walls forming up. So now I'm going to do it with just 1 color. Okay, I'm going to be using this green one. First wall always has the 3 beads, and then stitch through the next bead on the base. Okay, pick up 2, 1, 2, stitch down the side of the wall and the base. One and 2. Now I'm going to turn it so that we can see it a little bit better. Stitch through the pink. Pick up 1, 2, stitch down, the wall, and the pink on the base. That's our third wall. Stitch through the blue on the base, up the side on the first wall, pick up 1, stitch down the side bead on the last wall, the base, up the side bead on the first wall, and through the one that we've just added. Oops, there we go. Now turn it to work on the top, stitch through all 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And continue adding walls. Let's keep going. 3, 1 and 2, 1 on the base, turn, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, stitch, stitch, 1, stitch, stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 more. There's 2 beads right here. There should only be 1. So this is a good teaching moment. You can take your pliers, put them in here. This is a big bead, and then just crack it. Be careful that you don't cut your thread. And now you only have the 1 bead. But now this is going to be a little bit loose, so we're just going to go to a little bit of a tug to try to tighten it a little bit. And now you only have the 1 bead. So now you can stitch through the 4 at the top. and continue. Let's add this type of green. 1, 2, 3. And that's how cubic right angle weave is done. Hope you liked this video, and if you did, make sure to share it with your beading friends. See you next time.